All
Good
right.
afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon for our Federal Government Day. We are very excited to feature DLH Corporation, and we have a few different representatives here today. But to kick things off, I will introduce Patrice.
Hello, everyone. Patrice Galloway here. I am the Director of Talent Acquisition here at DLH. So anything related to recruiting would fall under my wheelhouse. So today I have a group of talent experts with me who will share information about DLH, its culture, as well as their journey to DLH. What we have as far as our agenda is Porter Lessif, who will speak first about the culture and introducing DLH to you. We will have Dr. Leilani Francisco, who will speak about her journey after her graduation and how she came to DLH. And then the primary key speaker will be Dr. Sandra Halverson, who will help you choose between academia and the industry, and will give some advice in that area. And right after that, we'll highlight maybe some of the jobs that we have available just quickly. I will put the careers link in the chat as well for you to take a look for yourself, and then we'll go into Q&A. So that being said, I am going to introduce Porter Lessif, who will be speaking directly to you. Porter, over to you.
All right, thank you, Patrice. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. We hope that you're well, and we'll learn a little bit more about DLH today. So we are DLH. It doesn't stand for anything, couldn't tell you. But what we do is quite a number of things. So we, in particular, have three main capabilities where we focus a lot of our time and energy. So this is going to be a lot of words coming at you, but I promise they're really interesting, and I still continue to learn something new about what we do every single day, which I really love. So the first focus area is digital transformation and cybersecurity. The second is science, research, and development, which is probably very relatable to what you would like to hear about today. And then the third focus area for our capabilities is systems engineering and integration. And the way that we carry out those capabilities are in a number of ways, but one of the main functions of that is we do have a couple of operation centers. So we have Health and Information Technology, or HIT. I'm trying so hard not to say the acronyms, guys, I promise. We also have Public Health and Scientific Research. We have National Security Programs, and then we have, AMS. Sandy, can you help me out with AMS? Oh, you're on mute, Sandy. There's a lot of alphabet soup at DLH, I promise.
Advanced Mission Solutions.
Thank you. Advanced Mission Solutions. So we do a lot in all of those things. So as you can imagine, those are pretty big umbrellas, and we work on a wide array of very diverse contracts and projects with some really wonderful clients in order to bring that digital transformation, public health, or cybersecurity to life for them. So that's what we do. We have our hands in a lot of different pots. There are a lot of really exciting projects to work on at any given time here at DLH, and Dr. Francisco and Dr. Halverson will be able to talk more about that as well. And for the culture here at DLH, we are mainly in a couple of spots on the East Coast. So we have some headquarters in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C., in Durham, North Carolina, as well as Charleston, South Carolina. And we recently have a very small incubator in Orlando, Florida. And so we have quite a number of reach regionally, and we have a lot of employees who are remote, but also get to work on client sites, come into the office occasionally, get to meet people in person as well. We also have corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and that is my role. So I'm the CSR analyst at DLH. And what we do is we really focus CSR on three main focus areas as well. So that's civic engagement, so things like philanthropy and community service, as well as diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, or DEIB, and then sustainability. So we do have an environmental social governance, or ESG, reporting system, as well as we do account for Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions. So that's a whole lot under CSR, but a big driver of CSR is all of our employees. Our employees have really big hearts, and they like to participate in their community, whether it's behind the desk at DLH or outside of the office in their own communities. And so what that looks like is we do have DLH Cares, which includes organized volunteering opportunities, a corporate match for your favorite nonprofit donations. We have something called the National Window of Service for Veterans, or NWS, every single year. And that's a 2-month period where we really elevate our impact for the military community in particular. For DEIB, or Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging, we do have a DEIB council, as well as subcommittees, as well as community networks. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved in diverse conversations. So whether that's sharing stories or experiences or resources with your colleagues, or whether that's giving recommendations to DLH on how to improve its operation. And one of the examples of that is we do have a DEIB strategic plan now. So we've been working on that since this past January when it formally launched, and it'll run through 2026. We also have in our community networks, which are our version of employee resource groups, or ERGs, we have some folks who really like to provide us with opportunities for improvement at DLH. So one of the best examples of that is pronoun education. That's something that a lot of our employees were very interested in learning more about, how to represent themselves, represent others. And so we were able to partner together in order to make that happen. So that's what our culture kind of looks like at DLH. And one of the things that I'm very excited about that I will leave you with is something called a Global Heritage Showcase. And I was about to say the acronym again. I'm so sorry, guys. So our Global Heritage Showcases have been a really great way to come into the office and meet your colleagues and share really great food. That has been my favorite part of it. We get to learn about specific cultures of our colleagues. So for instance, our first Global Heritage Showcase was featured on Jamaica. We had one of our colleagues who is from Jamaica, and his mother-in-law actually cooked very amazing Jamaican food for us. The second one we had very recently was on India's Independence Day. So it featured India's culture and was really wonderful, and that was held in Atlanta. And Dr. Halverson, it's coming down to you next. I'm really hoping that we can have a Puerto Rican Global Heritage Showcase sometime in January or February. So we're really excited about that. But we love to get to know one another at DLH. Everyone is extremely friendly. Everyone really likes to ask the very challenging and poignant questions that really help us grow, to understand the work that we're doing, to really understand the life cycle of the impact of the work that we have on people, on communities. So it's a really great place to continually challenge yourself to be your best, whether that's behind the desk or outside of the office in the community. So with that said, that's a quick snippet of word vomit for you guys about what DLH does, who we are, and what our culture looks like. I'm going to now turn it over to Dr. Francisco. And while I do that, if you guys have any questions at all about DLH, about our culture, about what we do, I will be monitoring the chat. So if you want to throw them in the chat, you're welcome to, as well as we will have some opportunity at the end of our presentation to have some live Q&A as well. So Dr. Francisco, over to you.
Thank you, Porter, and good afternoon, everybody. It's my great pleasure and honor to be here today. And I was asked to speak a little bit about my career journey to DLH. So before we get started, I'll share just a little bit of background. I've been working in the field of public health research and evaluation for over 25 years, with the last 15 years focused on global emerging infectious diseases, and the last 5 years focused on EID, emerging infectious disease clinical trials. I graduated from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health in the Department of International Health in 2010, quite a while ago. And I'm currently a program director at DLH within the Public Health and Scientific Research Operations Center. Patrice, could you hold just for a sec for me, please? You might be muted, but I will just wrap up quickly and then move to the slide. So I'm in the PHSR group, which is Public Health and Scientific Research, and specifically within CTRS, which is the Clinical Trials Research Services Program. All right, so ready to head over to the slides. So before my PhD, before I started my program, I was working in academic research positions. Next bullet. Started my master's in applied medical anthropology and worked at a place called Battelle in the CFRE group, the Center for Public Health Research and Evaluation. And I was interested in learning more about international research. So I engaged in health research consultancy, and that was with ICRW, which is the International Center for Research on Women in Washington, DC. I then completed my master's and then started working at AIR, which is the American Institutes for Research. Okay, and so during my PhD, I did continue to work at AIR, and I was hired by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine to conduct research in Uganda for a year, and that data was used for my dissertation. And that study was a cluster randomized controlled trial to evaluate the effectiveness of an intervention to prevent HIV and violence against women. And we were able to demonstrate effectiveness through the randomized evaluation, and it's currently being used in 30 countries, over 30 countries, and in over 500 communities around the world. So let's see. I then engaged in a couple more international research consultancies, one with AED and then one at Hopkins at CCP, the Center for Communication Programs. And this really fueled my passion for the international realm. And this is when my work life and school balance got a little bit challenging. It was a lot easier during my master's. And in fact, during the PhD program, they warned that first year students shouldn't work. I thought I was different. I was not different. So I did have to drop down to working part-time at AIR, but I got a lot more out of my program. So then after the PhD, I worked at Booz Allen Hamilton as a management consultant for almost 7 years. I worked with my mentor to grow a global health portfolio from $5 million to $20 million in service to USAID, the Global Fund, and CDC. I also worked in the area of One Health, which are public health solutions that see human health, animal health, and the environment as interconnected. And so in this position, I co-managed a study to assess countrywide capabilities in biosurveillance, biosafety, and biosecurity in 15 countries, and including the One Health perspective, looking at human health, animal health, and the environment. So after that, I worked at EcoHealth Alliance in New York City, which is also a One Health Forward type research organization. And I worked on the USAID Predict project. In that position, I served as the global director for behavioral risk surveillance, supporting 28 countries, and as the partner lead for human, ecological, and biological surveillance, supporting 11 countries. So from there, I worked at the Henry M. Jackson Foundation within the Global Infectious Diseases Program, the Clinical Research Directorate, and served as the director of DCAC, which was the Data Coordinating and Analysis Center. This was in support of MHRP, which stands for the U.S. Military HIV Research Program, as well as EIDB, which was the Emerging Infectious Diseases branch, both of which are housed at RARE, which is the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. In this position, I oversaw over 25 clinical data managers and analytic staff, including programmer analysts and biostatisticians, who support over 50 HIV and emerging infectious disease studies, including vaccine trials, observational, behavioral, public health evaluations in more than 12 countries. And finally, I now work at DLH as the director of the Network Coordinating Center for the ACTG Clinical Trials Network, which stands for Advancing Clinical Therapeutics Globally for HIV and Other Infections. And I currently manage a team of over 50 staff, including clinical trial specialists, scientific committee coordinators, project managers, other support staff, and together we provide assistance to over 80 infectious disease clinical trials, among other studies. So ACTG is one of the oldest and largest clinical trial networks aimed at curing HIV and other EIDs. It's funded by the Division of AIDS, which is DAIDS at NIH, and we work in over 18 countries. So the image there reflects that it was after my PhD at Hopkins that I really felt that I had the skills that I needed to pursue everything that I had been dreaming of in my career, but on a much larger scale. And that goal, my mission, is to improve the health of the world's most vulnerable populations to the greatest extent possible. So I'll close by saying that we have some open positions that are with ACTG NCC. If you go to the website that Patrice put in the chat, you can take a look at the details. One position is for a staff person to support the leadership of the ACTG network, and that would include the chair, the vice chair, and the international vice chair of the network. And the second, which will be posted by the end of the day tomorrow, is a clinical trials specialist position. And these CTSs support PIs and protocol teams in the development and implementation of their clinical protocols. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at the end.
Great. Thank you, Leilani. Good afternoon to all of the students and postdocs at Hopkins. I am Sandy Halverson. I'm the Chief Scientist and Vice President at DLH. I've been here for about 14 years this coming January. I came from Vanderbilt University, where I was an assistant professor of medicine and the associate director for the PhD program in epidemiology. I have had quite a circuitous route, as do many of my colleagues, and I'm sure all of you students do as well, getting to the position that you're in now. I started out in, the wet lab in basic science. I was working on angiogenesis research out at Scripps Research Institute in California, lovely by the ocean. That was one of the biggest benefits. And was really interested, I think, in getting closer to the human state, right? We were working in lab, in vitro, and I think I missed that connection with humans and seeing our work in action. I came to George Washington University, where I did a master's degree in public health, focusing on epidemiology and biostatistics. At the same time, I worked at Georgetown University in tumor biology. And I was doing quite a bit of research on cell cycle regulation, really in the mode of still being in the laboratory. I am a trained molecular and cancer epidemiologist. My heart has always been with cancer. I have loved the advent of the integration with the molecular world. That happened for me about 25 years ago. So I was just at the precipice of this burgeoning world and decided that I wanted to pursue a PhD in epidemiology. Headed off to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, then off to Vanderbilt to do a postdoc where I earned a 99R00 research grant and accepted a tenure-track faculty position. Fully thought my heart was in academia, and that's where I wanted to be. I think we all grow up through academic research, and we're not always exposed to the wide world that is out there and opportunities. And sort of life came along, and I had a real opportunity to make the jump after marriage, and decided to take a role in industry where I led up a project by Dr. Dale Sandler at the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences. It was a large 50,000 woman cohort looking at genes and environment and breast cancer. Subsequently moved up through the company to head of the Survey Research Center, and to where I am today as VP and Chief Scientist. So I've had a lot of different hats, been in a lot of different roles, and I'm sure you as students have done the same thing. But as you're getting ready to start your job search or internship or looking for a postdoc or thinking about where you might want to head next, I thought I'd give you some perspectives and maybe some questions to ask as you move forward. The disclaimer here is this is my journey, my opinion, and what may be important to me may not be as important to you and another colleague. So hopefully I can give you the right questions to ask to help you find that right fit for you as early as possible. Next slide. When I talk about academia, I'm thinking of a major university, a medical center, a research center, a teaching hospital that probably most of you are familiar with. You can have smaller institutions or private research like the Salk Institute or Scripps or Cold Spring Laboratory, but that academia covers what I would say are universities and government that acts very much like academic research. We support a large number of government clients doing their work. And I can have Patrice put a link in that links to some of our public health research that we've supported, just to give you an idea of some of the publications that we've had the privilege of working on together with our government clients. Next slide. So in terms of academic roles, they tend to fall in two areas. This is probably more relevant if you're heading down the PhD route. There's tenure track and research track. Tenure track tends to have an expectation of sustained high scientific output. There is also teaching and university service and recognition in your field. You must bring in funding, usually at a high level, and demonstrate leadership. The research track can be a slightly different focus. There's typically little or no teaching required. You still have to obtain your own funding. You may have shorter term contracts, but research is your main focus. Next slide. So what did I love about being in academia? I loved Vanderbilt. I have loved all the universities that I have had the opportunity to work at. It is a rich research and colleague environment, and I'm sure that you all see that at Hopkins. I really loved mentoring students. There were many opportunities for growth. I loved the enthusiasm that students brought to research. I had the benefit of numerous research and the opportunity to direct my own research, the things that really fed my scientific soul. At the same time, there were sometimes cons with academic positions. Competing priorities, the constant pressure to publish to obtain funding, teaching. While I loved mentoring, teaching took a huge amount of time, especially when I was teaching, epidemiologic methods courses and had to make sure that the data sets that I was working with really demonstrated to students the things that I wanted them to show. And I always felt like my students deserved, my best effort. And so other things tended to fall to the wayside, but not teaching. University responsibilities, I was on committees, community service across the university. And for me, research always ended up at the bottom of the list. And it was also, I think, difficult finding a work-life balance for me. Next slide. So if you're thinking about a position in academia, and that can be as a research assistant, a data analysis, thinking about a postdoc, ask yourself or the person that you might be working for or with, am I working on one project or many? Am I paid off of grant money? I think this is important because if you're paid off of grant money, maybe of a mentor or an investigator, that may have a limited time period, up to 5 years, or it may be a position that is funded by the department, which is ongoing. Think about the person you might be working with. Are they writing lots of grant applications? Do you like writing grant applications? Are you good at it? If not, ask yourself and look for opportunities, especially while you're at Hopkins. What can I do to get there? This is a skill set that I think will serve you well wherever you end up. Do I have a good understanding of what my other responsibilities are? Could there be teaching involved? Could there be laboratory maintenance? Could there be recruiting participants? What does this job really look like? And do I have people at the university that could serve as mentors and resources to support if you're junior faculty or if you're a postdoc or if you're a master's student? I'm going to move past this side. I think this is a little bit more for postdocs, but I wanted to talk a little bit about industry. And industry can have a wide range. If you're interested in pharmacological research, you're probably familiar with Pfizer, J&J, Genentech. There are contract research organizations that do everything from survey research to polling. I'm sure you all are well aware of it right now. NORC, Gallup. There's biotech, there are biorepositories, there are research biologics, such as the Jackson Lab or ATCC. There are fee-for-service locations. I know that Hopkins or the Broad Institute provides services to other laboratories, whether it's genotyping or metabolomics. And then there's also out-of-the-box industry. You could be a scientific expert at a law firm. You could be working in the field of journalism or as a science writer. And as mentioned earlier, a lot of the methods that you learn related to survey methodology really have a role in polling or politics or marketing. Next slide. Typically, there are two tracks in industry as well. There's the expert track if you're really interested in staying in your area of scientific expertise. It's research and project focused. It could be clinical trials or product development, biostatistical analysis, and there might be some business doing for experts in the company. Then there's the more corporate side, which I tend to wear now. It can be company focused. Management does play a much greater role. At one point, I was managing a group of about 65 folks and a portfolio of about $180 million of research projects. It involves business development and strategy, budget and fiscal responsibility. We're more likely to interface with clients, and some project work may be involved as well. I'm very lucky in my role as chief scientist. I get to wear both a scientific hat and oversee the science and ethical conduct of research at the institute where I'm at, but I also get to wear the business hat, which I love as well. What are the pros in industry compared to academia and sometimes government? I think the work happens much more quickly. We typically have very large teams, and so we have the ability to move our teams around to different projects. So I think industry can be a really great place for you if you want to try out different things and maybe figure out what is that best fit for you. I would also say that, the salary can be a little bit better in industry. And for me, it satisfies, again, my personal need to be involved in good science. What are the downsides of working in industry? You don't always get to choose what you want to work on. I always caution that that's kind of the same thing in academia. You don't always get to choose what you get to work on because you get to work on what you've been funded to work on. You have challenging clients. It is a service type business, and that can be a little different at times. You have to be comfortable in taking a backseat role for especially those of you who are investigators or have worked in that role. Sometimes you're taking a backseat role and really being supportive. For me, I have found the science to be just as good. I've had the opportunity to work with amazing collaborators at NIH and CDC and with the military health agencies. So for me, I haven't seen as much difference. And I think you also have to be very comfortable with rapid change in priorities. We see that a lot in industry. Not all industry is the same, and you have to be comfortable with different degrees of corporateness. You can find industries that are nonprofit all the way up to publicly traded. So ask yourself, am I comfortable not being able to control what I'm working on? Do I like working across projects, or would I rather dive into a single project? Am I okay in taking a step back from being a PI? Do I like change? Can I be agile if I need to be? And how do I learn how to do that? And what am I interested in? Expert track or management track? Next slide. So, tips for success. Get as much experience as you can in peripheral areas, and whether you end up in academia or government or industry. I think having some experience in any of these, or as many of these as you can, will benefit you in the long run. The one thing I like to point out to all students: don't hide your background if you don't think it really relates to what you do now. Highlight that on your CVs and your resumes, because often we're looking for people that are unicorns, that bring really interesting backgrounds, be it technical or radiation biology or military service. Demonstrate that background in your resumes, because it really brings subject matter expertise to what you do. Look for internships. We have internships at DLH. I think it's a real great opportunity to try out that type of position. Always find yourself a mentor. I don't care what age you are, what stage of your career. Find yourself a mentor that you can really ask questions of, who can help guide you and help you take that next step in your career. And as I mentioned, not all industry is created equal. So it may require a change. One job may not be the right fit, but it doesn't mean that a different job, either in academia or industry, won't be the right fit for you. Next slide. Tips for graduate students. If you haven't looked at this yet, I really encourage you to look at it. It's the Student Loan Repayment Program. They have a number of opportunities where, if your application is accepted, they pay back part of your student loans if you engage in areas of research that's a high priority to them. Look at this now before you take on jobs. It may be an opportunity, or it may be a little additional information that helps you select the job, especially if it associates with the Student Loan Repayment Program and you've got student loans to pay. So give this a look. Next slide. My 2 cents, never stop adding tools to your toolkit. Look at each opportunity not as a failure, but as an opportunity to learn something new and take something away. Surround yourself with people who you trust and who will give you an honest evaluation. Do not underestimate the power of networking. I encourage all of you to join your alumni associations, talk with your career development office. LinkedIn, I will look for some of your invitations on LinkedIn. I encourage you to reach out to speakers, because often a conversation starts in a situation like this, and it can lead to a job opportunity in the future. Recognize that it's not just a change in position, but mindset. Be open to new opportunities and see if it happens to be the right fit. Next slide. And don't be afraid to change your path. For someone, the biggest change I ever made was leaving a tenure track faculty position with funding. I had a marriage and a sort of a change in life status that required moving from where I was at Vanderbilt back to North Carolina for family issues. And I fully thought I would head back to UNC, and this opening for a really interesting job leading Dale Sandler's sister study came open. And it really has led me down a path that I love. I love academics, I love science, I love business. And for me, it really, I found a job that is the nexus of all of those things. So don't be afraid to change. If it's not quite right, keep looking until you find that right position and feed the sort of scientific soul. Next slide.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you all.
Awesome information. We're going to go into Q&A really soon. I just wanted to at least show the positions that we really need additional applications for. There are a few other positions pending, one listed here, but more coming. So please keep an eye out on our careers page and, reach out to us individually if you don't see something that you're interested in. So I will stop sharing here in this and open it up to questions. All right, and while we're waiting, and feel free to raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. I do see one question. I'm sorry. One question says, curious to learn more about DLH's day-to-day culture. Oh, that's Porter.
That was
No.
me, Patrice.
Can you please post a link to the student loan repayment program?
I just put that in there as well, Patrice, and so did Sandy.
Awesome. All right, that's actually it on the site for questions. Do we have any questions from students about anything?
Anything.
If
And you
folks
can
would like to
address
raise their
them to
hand, I can
anyone.
take them off of mute. So,
Okay. And you can address your questions to anyone on the panel, if it's specific to Leilani or Sandra or Porter. Or me.
And one thing, you can find us if you look up DLH, and I think Carolyn has our email addresses. If you do have a question later on, please, funnel them through Carolyn or let us know. I know sometimes the minute you get off of a call or a talk is when you think about something you wished you asked. So, please reach out. We're here. I know all of us like to mentor and have had wonderful mentors. And so happy to do that. And I'd absolutely be willing to send slides. I can send those along.
yeah,
Carolyn, we can go ahead and send them to you.
yes, if you want to send them to me, I can send them out to folks that registered. Well, I will ask a question since no one else has, and notice that a number of you have been with DLH for quite some time. I think, Sandy, you said 14 years. I would love to just hear a little bit more about what has kept you at DLH and what are maybe some areas or opportunities for growth within the organization.
For me, I have been here because I love working with the people. And I will tell you, I will put those folks up with some of the best scientists and research assistants and operational specialists I have worked with anywhere in academics or private research. I think first and foremost is that they do good science. We do good science. We also have a huge amount of different types of research to work on. We've had the large longitudinal study for NIEHS. It's 20 years now. We still have very high response rates, up near the 90% for participants. Our company performed for NIEHS in response to the Gulf Horizon, the Deepwater Horizon Gulf oil spill. Looked at exposures for cleanup workers to look at what types of outcomes they would have. We had the opportunity to work with some occupational exposure experts at Hopkins. We do a lot of collaborations in industry and academia as well. So we have a number of contracts with the NIDDK. So if you're interested in diabetes or kidney disorders, we have those opportunities. We do a lot of data analysis and surveillance work around HIV for the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. And we're moving into military health research. So we do a lot of modeling and simulation work dealing with performance of medics during when they're unfortunately in the war theater. And so it gives us an understanding of how people respond in stressful environments and how we can help them do their work better. So we have a full range of cancer, non-cancerous outcomes, military health research, integrations with cybersecurity. We do some secret type work, modeling and simulations, predictive modeling for the Navy in some situations. So if you're interested in, something different, look at industry. They do work with everything from children to women's health research to infectious disease to climate change to geospatial work. And I think Leilani can probably attest to the breadth of the work that we have the opportunity to work on.
Yes, I agree. I think the portfolio is great, and really it's the people for me too. For ACTG, it's been around for almost 40 years, and we've got someone on the team who started since the inception of the ACTG. They stayed, and that's one of the reasons why I was drawn to work here, is because so many people stay for forever. And at other places I've worked, it was just constant attrition and turnover. So I think it's the people. They're so supportive. Whenever there's a need, people drop things and it's all hands on deck and don't worry, we got you kind of attitude. And that's what makes a big difference for me. It's, the very bright intelligence of the folks I'm lucky enough to work with, and the fact that they're just so pleasant to work with. Those are seemingly a tough thing to come by sometimes in different organizations, and it's just widespread here. So I feel very supported. I feel like I'm given enough freedom that I've got the people I need to reach out to when I have questions. And then the work of the project I'm specifically on, ACTG, is it's a huge network of scientists, and I'm learning every single day. So I hit my 1-year anniversary on October 2nd. And it's been a really great experience. Thanks, Andy. And it's a great place to work. And then I think you also asked about growth within the organization. So we recently have revamped our categorizations of job categories and job families and job series, so that there's a clear path from one step to the next within each of the groupings. So that's a nice feature. It was a really big effort, but recently launched and helping us to communicate with our staff about what they need to do to get to the next level.
I'll also comment on the growth of, we are very much a learning organization. So you've already probably gauged that from Sandy and Leilani, just in terms of the work that you're exposed to. You are constantly being able to learn and challenge your skills. But outside of that, we also try to support you with your own development. So whether that's using our learning software system, which is called Today I Learned here at DLH, where you can use AI to practice really difficult conversations, maybe between colleagues. You can, maybe you want to get your project management professional certification. You can pursue those learning materials. We also really very much encourage certifications outside of the organization. So if you want to go to conferences, professional trade shows, that is always a possibility to explore. As well as, we do have a sort of new program called Aspire. And what Aspire is essentially our degree program for repayment. So you can apply to Aspire for a degree certification. And if it's approved and it's relevant to DLH and the work that we are all doing together, if you maintain a grade point average of a C or higher, you get to get a certain percentage of that covered from DLH's financial assistance. And what I think is kind of nice in terms of the freedom of that is that if you go through Aspire and you get your grade point average of a C or above, you have to stay with DLH for only 1 year in order for that to mature. And so just having that support here at DLH to learn and to lean into some of those new skills. I mean, for instance, one of our colleagues just took a graphic design course because she was really interested. It didn't really have a lot to do with what she was doing day to day until she took that course and was like, all of these applications have now opened up to me. And so now that I've worked on these skills, I can apply this for my role, and I can even help other teams at DLH with these new skills. So there's just a lot of opportunity to lean into that growth when you're learning here at DLH as well.
And if I can just add 1 minute more to add to that, is as far as growth is concerned, DLH really does focus on trying to promote from within versus bringing someone else into a role. So they support your career, whatever you want that to be. So if you want to stay on the track that you're on, great. If you ultimately want to move into management, that's an opportunity as well that may ultimately present itself. You could get to a point to where you're involved with speaking to the clients and our customers at CDC or NIH, as Sandra mentioned. You could ultimately get involved in business development and supporting, new opportunities that we may be going after. So as far as internal talent mobility, that is something that DLH really does a great job at. So if you're looking to stay and be accepted for your different perspectives, we also encourage that. We encourage thinking outside of the box here.
That actually brings me to a question. I'm Jeanette Jeffrey. I work within the career services. Excuse me, I have a cough today. Sandy, you had mentioned that you went from academia and then to having 65, was it? Folks that you oversaw and multi-million-dollar project. Did you get the tools on the job learning how to go into management and business? Because that's a whole different skill set that's required for that job.
It's quite interesting how I got there as well. I think I was always interested in sort of leadership and management. One of the topics that I wrote about in my training in my K-99 ROO grant application was I added a course on leadership, because I had seen folks run labs who had never been trained to run labs or groups of people. And that was something that I wanted to do effectively. I was part of a leadership development of junior faculty members at Vanderbilt as well. So I had the opportunity to take advantage of that. And then I started out, the project was big, but I had a wonderful mentor when I started at DLH who, helped me grow as a management leader. So I think I've always had that interest. Like I said, while you're a student, look for those opportunities. A lot of times those courses are free or they're very low cost. If it's grant writing at one of the conferences you go to, or a leadership seminar at, over in the business school, you can look for those at lunchtime. And find the areas that you're interested in, because again, you never know when they might come back around. So I think for me, it was the other piece that I always tell people, students, postdocs, folks I mentor, is ask why your mentor did something they did or why they made the decision that they made. I think that is a really great way to learn about what they're thinking about, why they made the decision, and hopefully help you hone your decision-making skills around management or science, whatever that topic is. So again, find yourself a good mentor and ask them questions.
I also have another question. How is it that DHL is funded, and do researchers need to go after their own grants to conduct their research?
So DLH we're largely funded by government contracts. So just like you might go after a grant when you're an individual investigator at a university, we go after large government contracts, and they're usually in the multi-million dollars. And it can be a support services contract to support a branch or a division or an agency to do a specific type of work. So we often work in collaboration with government agencies. Our clinical research group does get funding from pharmaceutical companies if they're testing a new drug or device. Leilani's group, ACTG, is housed out of UCLA. So that's a large cooperative grant, very much like those you'd get in academia. We have two programs internally. We have an internal grants program. So if you are an investigator that you'd like to write your own grant, we'll support you in doing that. Sometimes you might wear a hat 25% of the time to work on something that you're really passionate about, and maybe it's utilizing an existing data set, and you want to try some things and develop new methods, or move the science along in addition to the other types of work that you're doing for the company. We're always trying to feed the scientific soul, and that's one way of doing it. We also have, I lead a internal research and development program, which provides seed money from the organization to fund sort of, we like to say, high risk, high reward projects, or something that'll move us into new area. Maybe it's, developing new methods or applying methods in a new way, or providing preliminary data to demonstrate our ability to work in a specific area. Maybe it's around military research or radiation biology, whatever that might be.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, if we do not have any other questions, we
I
can.
think there's a hand. Is that Tom?
Was there a hand? Let's see here.
Oh, no, it's my little hand over. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I know we only have a few minutes left anyway, so we can go ahead and wrap up. So I wanted to personally thank the DLH team for taking the time to present today, Patrice for taking the time to coordinate with me, Porter, Sandy, Leilani. It was wonderful to hear from all of you and hear more about your experiences. So thank you again for taking the time. I did want to tell the folks on this call that we have one final session for Federal Government Day that is coming up at 4:00 p.m. It is Breaking into Federal Government, Fellowships, Contracts, and Federal Employment. And this will be put on by CJ Neely, who works in the doctoral office here at Johns Hopkins. So with that, I will give you all just a few minutes back in your day. Thank you again for taking the time to be with us. And I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Good luck,
Thanks,
students.
everyone.